Last year's Marvel's Spider-Man released to great critical acclaim. It was a success for the franchise in many ways. It established a likable and consistent personality for Peter Parker, crafted its own story while drawing on many familiar faces, feeling both classic and modern at the same time. As an open-world action game, Marvel's Spider-Man provides players with much to do and allows game players to customize their playing experience to a degree. Within the game's unique story, we can try and speculate as to what sort of future may lie in wait for the franchise, should this game serve as a beginning to one. Be forewarned that this video will contain spoilers about the game, but we also invite those who are fans of the Spider-Man character and those generally interested in the future of the franchise to speculate and to speak about what you think of the plot progression for a sequel. This video will start with the ending for the base game. The final boss of the game is Dr Octopus, also known as Dr. Octopus. In this game, Octavius is portrayed as a tragic figure and is contrasted to both Peter Parker, who works for Octavius as a research assistant, and Norman Osborn, a co-founder of Oscorp along with Octavius and mayor of New York City. Osborn is responsible for the creation of the Devil's Breath, a lethal bioweapon. After Octavius has his grant funding and laboratory research taken away by Osborn, Octavius grows increasingly resentful of Osborn, who initially split with Osborn because of his objections to a decision made years ago by Osborn to inject a young Martin Lee, also known as Mr. Negative, with an early version of what would become the Devil's Breath. The Devil's Breath was initially meant to be a treatment serum that would cure genetic disorders, and Norman Osborn, who lost his wife to Osteron syndrome and whose son Harry inherited the same disease, decided on his own to inject Martin Lee with the early Devil's Breath. It gave Lee superhuman powers, but an explosion that resulted from the injection killed his parents, earning Lee's ire towards Osborn. When Octavius split from Osborn, he founded his own company in Octavius Industries, though one reliant on government grants to survive. We also learn that Octavius suffers from a degenerative neuromuscular disease that would in time render him unable to exercise motor control over his body, and we would also see in the ending that Octavius is aware of Peter Parker's alter ego as Spider-Man, all while respectful of his vigilantism. Throughout the game, Octavius, with the help from Peter, would work on and develop a set of tentacle-like arms controlled by a neural interface implanted into the user's skull. Peter initially expresses skepticism about the project, fearing that the still imperfect neural implant could alter Octavius's mood and personality, but Octavius's anger eventually wins out and he activates the tentacles and neural implant, becoming Dr. Octopus. He recruits the villains who would eventually form the Sinister Six after releasing them from prison, and steals the Devil's Breath and releases it in Times Square, resulting in the infection of many, including Aunt May, a relative of Peter Parker. Octavius does this with the intention of forcing Osborn to admit to his unethical decision to test the early Devil's Breath on Martin Lee. Peter and Mary Jane Watson learn that there is a cure for Devil's Breath, but are intercepted by the now anger-consumed Dr. Octopus, who takes the cure and Osborn with him. Osborn refuses to admit to his crime, and Peter, as Spider-Man, decides to save him after Dr. Octopus throws him off of Oscorp. Dr. Octopus is then defeated by Spider-Man, who is later sent to prison after Spider-Man's victory. The amount of cure that Spider-Man obtains forces him into a difficult choice. Give the cure to Aunt May, who is on the verge of death immediately, or hand it to researchers who can develop and distribute more of the cure, and Peter chooses the latter, thereby saving New York City, effectively at the cost of Aunt May's life. We learn afterwards that Miles Morales, who was bitten by a spider late in the game, has also gained powers similar to Peter. And in a separate post-game scene, we see Norman Osborn, retired as New York City mayor, watching over his son Harry in a life support machine. The ending teases a future where Norman Osborn becomes the Green Goblin, and wherein the Venom symbiote takes over Harry Osborn. The story of Marvel's Spider-Man was continued with the 3-part DLC episode series, The City That Never Sleeps. It introduces the villain Hammerhead, a mafia family head affiliated and in competition with the other dons of the Magia crime syndicate, and Black Cat, a woman of apparently ambiguous moral allegiance. At the conclusion of The Heist, the first episode of the 3, Black Cat is seemingly killed when Hammerhead orders his underlings to rig her penthouse with explosives. Turf Wars continues Hammerhead's reign of terror as he wipes out a SWAT team, earning Yuri Watanabe's anger in the process, and seeks to eliminate the other Dons. Spider-Man saves the Dons after Hammerhead kidnaps them and later defeats Hammerhead himself, but Yuri shortly afterwards seemingly kills Hammerhead. This isn't the end of him, as he is later revived by one of his men. Once revived, Hammerhead uses the Project Olympus armor stolen from Sable International to reconstitute himself as a cyborg. The final chapter in the series, Silver Lining, sees Black Cat return and help Spider-Man discover Hammerhead's weakness by giving him a data drive. Then, Spider-Man works with Silver Sable to take down Hammerhead for good. After the credits for the DLC story pack is concluded, we see that Peter Parker is training Miles Morales to be a Spider-Man, with the latter outfitted with a Spider-Man mask. For those who have seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which released mid-December of last year, shortly before Silver Lining, there's an aspect to this story development that may feel familiar to a degree. Everything that was expanded upon in the endings leads into a mostly unified version of what a sequel would look like were it to exist. A disgraced Norman Osborn would become the Green Goblin, Harry Osborn would become Venom, or the symbiote is now established as having a presence in the series' mythology. Black Cat and Silver Sable are both alive. Miles Morales is training to become another Spider-Man, and Dr. Octopus is in prison. The villains besides Hammerhead and Norman Osborn are locked up in the raft, but there's nothing to say that more villains could be brought forth from Spider-Man's extensive rogues gallery to fight against the hero and/or his allies. The game is left open-ended enough so that it has a suitable conclusion, with the world largely at peace, even if it is set to burst. There's a large list of characters to draw from, and it could all be feasibly funneled into a sequel. We shouldn't expect to see more relationship drama with Mary Jane, as that was already heavily tested in both the main game and The City That Never Sleeps. We would perhaps expect to see Miles Morales helping Peter Parker as a second Spider-Man. It's not really clear that there's much else necessary to be seen from Black Cat or Silver Sable, but we should inevitably see more from Harry Osborn and the Venom symbiote. At the end of the main game, Dr. Octopus reveals to Peter Parker alone that he knew Peter is Spider-Man, and it's possible that Dr. Octopus, who already has motivation to continue fighting against a still-free Norman Osborn, may be brought out of the raft. A sequel should continue with and conclude the story of the Osborn family, now that Norman is in hiding with his son. But these are just our thoughts. What do you expect from a hypothetical sequel to the game? Do you expect many new characters to be introduced in a sequel? Would we see more Spider heroes besides Miles Morales with Into the Spider-Verse released? Which characters do you expect not to see in a second game? Be sure to let us know in the comments section below. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.